The vast majority of athletes at some point in their career will experience rejection, whether it's not getting recruited, getting cut, or not making the team. If this is something that applies to you, listen up because today's video is made especially for where you are at. Hi, my name is Derek. I'm a certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, and I make films about the psychology of enhancing human performance. Selection, recruitment, being chosen, being not chosen, being cut, these are all normal parts of sport. And unfortunately, it's even fairly common in children's sport now. If you have been watching my videos, you've probably heard me talk about an athlete's brain and all the funny little things that sometimes come and coincide with having an athlete's brain. Being a brain that has high expectations, cares about sport, and sets lofty goals. Some of these silly things is get disappointed or down on ourselves when we don't get selected or we get cut or we don't make the team. This self-disappointment and feeling down and blue about it, that's a totally normal response when something like this happens. And I would even argue that to a degree, it's helpful. It's just you having expectations and goals that's important to you. And that disappointment is just a manifestation of the importance that you hold for your sport. However, we definitely don't want that disappointment to prevent you from being your best self, which is why it's very, very important to learn how to bounce back and progress after being rejected. So today's video is going to be 3 tips that you can use to persist forward and bounce back from rejection. Tip 1, remember that failure is feedback. And that's not just metaphor or hyperbole. Failure is in some ways a good thing to experience because you can learn from it. Now that learning is a choice. You do have to reflect and you do have to think about what are the things that you could do in order to progress. There's some healthy and good reflection questions when you experience rejection. What are you doing that maybe isn't working in your favor? If you could go back to the moment of trying out or the interview, or if there was like a moment where you had to put your skills on display for the people who are going to be selecting you, what could you have done different in that moment? And another totally valuable question to ask yourself and to ponder on is, what are your strengths? What are the things that work in your favor that you're really good at? And how can you continue to leverage those strengths, put those on display for recruiters, coaches, etc. Feedback ultimately is data. And if you want to be good at anything in life, you need to learn how to incorporate that data when learning how to be your best self. 2, and this one might be kind of weird, but remember that coaches are people and they may have made a mistake in not selecting you. There's actually evidence to show that coaches and recruiters do make mistakes, that they don't necessarily have a crystal ball and they can't perfectly predict which athlete's going to be great and which athlete's going to be not great. Even the best of coaches make mistakes. They're not all batting 100. So if a coach decided that you weren't right for the team and you were cut or deselected, it's important to remember that maybe there's some data to take from that, some things to learn, but it's also possible that they were just flat out wrong and they made the wrong decision for whatever reason. And then finally, learn how to control the controllables. Now, if you've been doing any form of sports psychology or mental training or working with any sport performance coach, you've probably heard that saying in some way, shape, or form, which essentially suggests that you should devote your focus to the things that are within your direct control, which is ultimately your behavior. The one way that I help people apply this is by having them take a piece of paper, drawing a circle in the middle of that piece of paper, and then just for 20 minutes reflecting on all the things that are within your control, which you write in the center of the circle, and reflecting on the things that are outside of your control, which you write on the outside of that circle. And if you just recently experienced rejection, I honestly think doing this circle activity is extremely important, especially if you have one of those silly athlete brains, because the silly athlete brain in a circumstance of rejection is going to want to drift towards the uncontrollable things, such as the coach, the other athletes, the past, or the future. It's really easy to ruminate on these things. Doing this control circle activity can ground that silly athlete brain and remind the silly athlete brain what's really important and what are the things you need to dial in on, focus on, so you can be better and hopefully get selected the next time. So in closing, remember that failure is feedback. Your coaches may not be the best at making their picks, so don't get too down on yourself and then learn how to control the controllables. Failure isn't the worst thing. Being rejected is not the worst thing. In fact, there's even some evidence to suggest that failure, rejection, this somewhat small t trauma, so to speak, can be an important ingredient for cultivating what will be someday a high-performing athlete. If you want to learn more about what it takes to be a mentally strong athlete, how to be resilient, how to achieve your goals, how to be overall mentally fit, you can go ahead and reach out to me in the description below. I will include a link to a free 15-minute phone call. I'm happy to hop on a phone call with anybody just to see if mental performance consulting is a good fit for them. All right, thank you for watching. Have a good week. Rock on.